हाल दोस्तों, मैं हाँ भुपिंदर and ਤੁਸੀਂ देख रहे हो Just Punjabi. दोस्तों, as we all know that there is one issue that disturbs most of us coming from our country to this country. We all don't know much about the laws here, but we would love to know about this. But as they say, the strength of a community is to know about the laws, the rights and the duties as well. Well, we are here to talk about all this and to tell you what rights you have regarding immigration, like what troubles you can have and how to face those troubles. Well, you don't have to worry about that. In our studio, we have the members of a very reputed law firm, Bretz Coven, and their members. Let's meet them. We have Carrie Bretz.
Hi, nice to be here. Thank you for having us, BK.
And Aline. How
Hi.
are you doing today?
Very well, thank you.
So as I said, immigration is one of the main issues that actually affect our community, and lots of people, they worry about it. They are, if I would say that they're scared of the laws, will not be wrong.
Yeah, I think that's correct, and sadly to say, immigration law is so complicated, it's illogical in the U.S. What you think would make sense is almost the opposite. So it is really important to consult somebody who absolutely knows. Our laws on immigration are almost ridiculous.
Yeah, so talking about immigration laws, recently there was a much hype about the new law that will be there, but it never passed the House, I would say. So what are the reasons? Why is it stopping, and what can we expect in future?
Well, you're correct. The Senate earlier this year passed comprehensive immigration reform, which has, it's not great, but it has a lot of good things. It would give people who are here as of December 2011 the right to work and travel and work 10 years towards a green card. But if you get the right to work and travel, that resolves a lot. It also does some very intelligent things regarding employment-based immigration by basing it on statistics from the previous year's labor market. So the number of H visas would change each year depending upon the needs of the country. Very intelligent. Lots of enforcement is part of this bill. Not so great. But you're correct, it's stuck in the House, in the Congress, and the chances of it getting through the Congress now that the government is shut down is pretty small, and it's very disappointing. Having said that, there was a group of Democratic congressmen who have been very forceful, even recently during the shutdown, on keeping immigration in the forefront of congressional priorities. So we may see comprehensive immigration reform, but we don't know yet.
Yeah, and talking about that, we have heard that there are some states that are actually doing some initiative. They are trying to get some benefits to those people who are undocumented. So
Yeah, that's true too, but it works both ways. There are states that are like Arizona and like Alabama who have done some very serious anti-immigration law, and some states that have been allowing, in fact, people who are undocumented to be licensed as lawyers after they graduate law school. So a lot of interesting trends in the states. Immigration is a hot issue, but we don't have reform yet. Hopefully soon.
hopefully soon. So Aline, so you deal with those work-related visas, if I am correct.
That's right. People who come to the United States and they may be employed by a company through an H-1B, and then they want to go ahead and transfer that into a green card, we help them with that. Others may come here to finish their education, get a college degree, work for a year, and then they look for an employer to file for them and get them at least a temporary work visa. And then later on, we try and see if we can convert that to a green card again.
So talking about Bretz Coven, this law firm, how and what type of cases do you deal with?
Great question. I would like to get some easy cases, but we seem to get mostly complicated cases, and we get a lot of referrals from other immigration lawyers. So typically in the office, we do cases where a person may have allegedly committed a fraud or has a criminal history or used somebody else's name. All the cases that are not what you would call not clean. And those are the kind of cases that we do. We've been doing it for about 20 years. and we enjoy it. We like what we do. We speak 15 languages in the office, including Punjabi and Hindi, and we're proud of that. But yeah, I would like some easy cases, but most of the time the cases are complicated.
So let's take a scenario. Somebody got deported because they committed a fraud, embezzlement of funds or something, and but they have a family here. His wife and kids are here. Kids are citizens. So what options do he have now?
This is a great question, and it's a complicated question. You've asked what happens if someone's been deported and now physically back in India, let's say, and they want to come back to the United States. So there are various ways to do that. In certain circumstances, it would be impossible to come back. If you were deported for a controlled substance offense, you could never come back with a green card. But if you were deported, let's say, for fraud, immigration fraud, or simply overstaying your visa, and it was during the time of the Bush administration where everybody was being deported, you would have some waivers you would need. There are some time bars, but essentially a citizen spouse could petition for you, family members could petition for you, and you could come back. And we do a lot of cases like that. They're frustrating, but they're interesting. And we recently had a case in which also a Punjabi family was, the person was actually physically deported, but we had filed a motion to reopen his case the day before. Immigration ignored it. The judge wound up reopening the case and finding that he shouldn't have been deported to begin with. This was about 5 years ago.
Okay.
We just brought him back a couple of weeks ago. So it is possible to do, but it is a frustrating process.
Definitely, I can definitely understand the families, like what they go through, because the person is there and the family is here. It's a very emotional situation when it comes to that, and I actually don't feel really good when people have put their petition like so those 10, 13 years back, and still they are waiting for their brothers and sisters, if we talk about. And that being said, we have heard that this category will not be existing anytime sooner. So
it's possible. It was. Did you want to take that? It was proposed in the comprehensive immigration reform.
It's one of the things they would like to change and take away, and then use those visas towards the other categories, such as employment-based or the family of lawful permanent residents, the spouses and children or adult children. But they've been talking about eliminating this category for decades, and it hasn't happened. So there are a lot of people out there in positions of power that they don't want to get rid of sibling petitions. So if this bill goes through, it might be changed before the bill gets passed, and it might, survive yet again. It's a wait and see on the part of the immigration lawyers community, I think.
That's correct.
So we'll wait for the reforms to come through, definitely. Till then, let's come back to the H-1B visa. Can a person who's here on H-1B visa own a company or like open his business of his own?
Well, H-1Bs, there's temporary work visas where you basically are the employee of the company who petitioned for you. Technically, you are not able to go out and work for anybody else or even own your own company. But as an investor within a company, there are no limits on that. But when it comes down to going in and starting your own business, it could get a little tricky. So we need to look at the situation, see what's best for each individual applicant.
And if a person is on that H-1B visa in the same company, the role changes. So maybe he got a promotion or something, and the role he was in is completely changed. So what's the procedure? Will he have to inform it to somebody or just carry on with the same procedure?
Yeah, because the H-1B application was for a particular position, they would need to go ahead and amend that with immigration. It's not that they wouldn't actually get it amended, but they would have to notify immigration and they would have to approve the petition.
Definitely. So let's talk about those people who came here long time back, crossing the borders or some way, came here and they changed their names, have multiple petitions filed, and one of them got approved but another is still somewhere and they forgot to mention it. Let's just put it right way. Like somebody told them, oh, please don't mention it, otherwise it will mess up your case. So they just didn't mention it. Later on, when applying for the citizenship, the inquiries are more comprehensive and these things come up. What should be their course of action?
That's a great question, and it's very accurate. People who have got their green card by failing to mention something negative that was in their immigration history before that, like an asylum case they lost or a marriage case they had, maybe in the same name, maybe in a different name. When they apply for naturalization, the investigation is so intense that these other cases usually come up. And what people fail to realize, everything you do with immigration, you do with your fingerprints.
Exactly.
And so it doesn't matter, you know, if you used one name here and another name there, later on immigration is going to figure it out. So where it was basically a simple fraud, they failed to mention a name, or a very common scenario they're being petitioned for is the unmarried child of a citizen, but they get married. And then when they go to the consulate, they say, no, I'm not married. And they come here with their green card. Later on, immigration figures that out. They will deny the naturalization for sure. And then the possibility is whether or not they could be placed in removal proceedings or deportation proceedings. Oddly enough, the laws in New Jersey are different than they are in New York. It sounds crazy. We have one federal immigration.
ਸਤਿ ਸ੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ ਜੀ, ਮੈਂ ਮਨਜੀਤ ਬਹਾਦਰ ਸਿੰਘ ਬੋਲ ਰਿਹਾ ਜਸ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਤੋਂ। ਮੇਰੇ ਸਾਹਮਣੇ ਬ੍ਰੈਟਸ ਐਂਡ ਕੋਵਨ ਤੋਂ ਪ੍ਰੋਮੀਨੈਂਟ ਅਟਾਰਨੀਜ਼ ਕੈਰੀ ਬ੍ਰੈਟਸ ਔਰ ਐਲਿਨ ਬ੍ਰੈਟਸ ਬੈਠੇ ਨੇ, ਤੇ ਉਹ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕੰਪਲੀਕੇਟਿਡ ਇਮੀਗ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਦੇ ਇਸ਼ੂਜ਼ ਨੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਦੇ ਸਾਹਮਣੇ ਆਉਂਦੇ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਡੀਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਨੇ, ਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਸਾਹਮਣੇ ਕਈ ਕੁਐਸਚਨ ਰੱਖਾਂਗਾ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਕਈ ਮਸਲੇ ਨੇ ਇਮੀਗ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਦੇ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਉਹ ਜਵਾਬ ਦੇਣਗੇ। Mr. Carey, you do mostly complicated immigration matters, and what are those matters that you deal with?
That's correct. It's mostly complicated. I would like, in fact, to have some easy cases. It would be okay sometimes. But mostly what I do are deportation defense, where there might be a criminal history or a previous immigration history with fraud, or a person needs some kind of waiver or combination of waivers. So very often the referrals we get in our office come from other immigration lawyers who feel that we're more equipped to handle those kind of complicated cases.
If a person is here in USA for the last 20 years and he married once and then he divorced, and then he had a wife in India but he never divorced her, and he marries a third wife, and then after third wife he realizes that he has not divorced his first wife and marries the third, can it succeed?
It is possible, and while that scenario sounds unusual and complicated, it's certainly not unusual, and we see that in our office all the time. The key, first of all, if you get married and you are already married, under the law, that second marriage is what we call void ab initio. It doesn't count. So the key is to often go back and correct that second or that first marriage with a divorce, and then for them to remarry. Also, I think the key is to be clean about it with immigration, not to hide it, because they're likely to figure it out sooner or later on, and there are waivers available if there was any fraud committed with immigration. You might as well get those waivers now when you've cleaned up the case. So yes, for somebody who has multiple marriages and may have forgotten to get divorced in between, it is difficult but possible to rectify that situation for purposes of applying for an immigrant visa.
There are instances that when a person marries someone and then here in USA and then files a divorce, and while the proceedings are in the court, and goes back to India and does a religious marriage but not a court marriage, which he does after the divorce is done, can he still bring the wife?
That is really a complicated question, and the first issue with that is, will immigration recognize the religious marriage?
Correct.
And that's often a fight with immigration, whether or not they would recognize it. And sometimes immigration wants to recognize it to hurt the petition, and sometimes they don't want to recognize it when it benefits the petition. Of course, immigration can't have it both ways. So it is a complicated circumstance, but it can be rectified. The key in all of these cases is to come back to the beginning, clean up the mistakes, and then redo it.
Yeah, so in a situation like that, once the divorce is legal, go ahead and make that religious ceremony a valid civil ceremony. And once it's a civil marriage, then the petition can take place, and then you could start petitioning. They wouldn't be, they wouldn't have a problem with petitioning for that spouse, provided they did not marry the spouse civilly prior to the divorce. The divorce has to have taken place before the civil marriage, not necessarily the religious marriage. Immigration does view them quite differently. Religious marriage is not a marriage at all in the eyes of CIS.
But in India, they recognize religious marriage as a real marriage, and so this law doesn't come in conflict with the Indian law?
Well, they may be married in India, but as far as the United States and most other countries, they wouldn't recognize it if they don't follow the same.
There is so that everybody's afraid to leave the U.S. so that, but
And I was trying to say that
they know that they're coming back with this form.
Yeah. I should say, provided there are no other grounds of inadmissibility. You have to come clean with your immigration lawyer. We're going to accept calls?
Yes.
Yep.
But who's going to call?
Viewers, if it's a live show, then viewers sometimes if they find that, oh, I can ask some question, just go on.
Oh, interesting. Uh-oh.
ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ ਦੋਸਤੋ, ਜਸਟ ਲਾਈਵ ਦੇ ਇਸ ਸੈਗਮੈਂਟ ਵਿੱਚ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦਾ ਬਹੁਤ-ਬਹੁਤ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਹੈ। ਮੈਂ ਹਾਂ ਭੁਪਿੰਦਰ ਅਤੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੇਖ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ ਜਸਟ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ। ਦੋਸਤੋ, ਕਿੱਦਾਂ ਦੀ ਇਹ ਪ੍ਰੋਬਲਮ ਹੈ ਜੋ ਕਿ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਕਦੀ ਨਾ ਕਦੀ ਕਿਸੇ ਨਾ ਕਿਸੇ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਨਾਲ ਪ੍ਰੋਬਲਮ ਦਿੰਦੀ ਹੈ। Right? That problem is actually related to laws, and as immigrants from from some other country in US, we face this issue once at least, and sometimes even more than once. The issue is immigration. Well, to talk about immigration, we have in our studio very well-known lawyers from a very well-known firm, Bretz Coven LLP. So let's meet them. We have Carrie. How are you doing today?
Doing very good. Thanks for having us, BK.
And we have Eileen. How are you doing today, ma'am?
Very well, thank you.
So let's talk about immigration, and first about the firm. It's Bretz Coven, and how long have you guys been doing immigration laws?
It feels like a whole lifetime, but it's about 20 years.
Oh,
Eileen, I think, was admitted in '95. I've been doing it since '91. I was a lawyer for the Immigration Service years ago, and we've been around for quite a while.
so being a lawyer for immigration services themselves, you know a lot that goes behind the scenario, if we say, as media, behind the scenes that we don't know.
Oh, no doubt. It was a good education coming out of law school to work for the government, and I learned a lot, although that seems like a long time ago.
So if I talk about just what are your specialties in immigrations?
Well, my particular specialty is complicated cases, deportation cases, cases that involve immigration fraud, or people with criminal history trying to avoid deportation or getting a green card, and waivers. I would like to see some easy cases, but I rarely do. We do mostly complicated cases, and mostly cases that are referred to us from other lawyers, other immigration lawyers.
And what about you, Eileen?
I handle a lot of family-based cases, employment-based, investor visas. I do some deportation cases, and then those off the beaten path, U visas, VAWA cases, and the like.
So as a firm, apart from these, do you deal with other parts of the law, not just immigration, but other legal affairs as
We
well?
really don't. We are exclusively or almost exclusively immigration. A lot of clients come to us to do their will, to do their estate, to do their house closing, to do their divorce, and we will accommodate them, but our specialty, our concentration is immigration, and we're really designed to do that. We 15 languages in the office, including Hindi and Punjabi, so we're really set up to do that. But some clients insist, you got me my green card, you got my family my green card, would you please do a house closing or something like that? So we do it, but as an accommodation to existing clients.
Definitely. So having expertise in just immigration laws, we have lawyers in our studios today. Carrie and Elaine, if you have any questions regarding immigration, you can definitely call us on the live show number. Phone number is 718-786-5222. Keep calling. Until then, I'll keep asking my questions. And let's talk about just, as you say, immigration. Let's go to Washington, D.C. for a while. There were lots of hype about the new immigration reforms that were coming, passed through Senate, but not going anywhere in the House, and now the government shut down. Where are we going with all this?
Great question. I don't think comprehensive immigration reform is dead just yet. Earlier this year, the Senate did pass a very comprehensive bill that had enforcement provisions as well as some great provisions for people who have been in the U.S. for many years. Particularly if you were here as of December 2011, under the Senate bill, you would be able to get a work authorization, travel permission right away, and many years later, a green card, a path to citizenship, as they call it. It also has a number of enforcement provisions that increase penalties for immigration fraud and that type of thing. Where it is now, it's a little stuck in the House. We don't know if we can get the government back up and running again. But some very bold Democrats just last week introduced a bill in the House, an immigration bill. And so I think there is a number of people that are trying to keep it alive. In the meantime, the Obama administration has done a number of things starting earlier this year to basically exercise prosecutorial discretion. While they are deporting record numbers of people, 400,000 a year, they are not deporting elderly people. They are not deporting single parents. They're not deporting children. They're not deporting people that don't have a criminal history. They're concentrating on threats to the community, sexual predators, gang members, violent felons. So that idea of prosecutorial discretion is very good. We have a number of clients with final orders of deportation, but they haven't been deported. They've been granted a stay of deportation or deferred action. Obama last year said, listen, children who came to the U.S. before they were 16, went to high school here, I'm going to give them a work authorization. That's called DACA, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. And then we have a big group of people who came here illegally, have a way of getting a green card through marriage to a citizen, but would have to leave the U.S. to get it. And the day they leave, they have a 10-year bar before they could come back. And there's a waiver of that, but nobody wants to leave and wait 3 or 4 years to see if a waiver comes through. So earlier this year, Obama did what with provisional waivers?
Obama had passed a law that allowed U.S. citizens to petition for their parents or for their spouses and allowed them to then get their green card while they can't get it in the United States, still apply for it so that they could pick it up at the consulate. This process, known as the provisional waiver, requires that they be petitioned for, have it approved, and then they can go ahead and file the waiver while everybody stays in the United States the same as they were before they filed the application. Once it's approved, which they've been generous on approving, and they've been pretty quick about approving it, then they can go ahead and attend the interview at the consulate. They can only do this if they are not inadmissible for any other reason. This is only available to people who are inadmissible for unlawful presence only. So people shouldn't just go ahead and apply for it. They should really consult with a lawyer, make sure that they qualify, and then they're not putting themselves in harm's way when they do attend the interview at the consulate. The prize at the end is they get to come home to the United States with a green card.